Words from afar, stars that are falling, sparks that are sown in us like seed. Names for our God, dreams, signs, and wonders, sent from the past, are all we need. We in this place remember and speak again what we have heard. Amen.
Amen.
Have you ever thought of someone just before the phone rang, only to find out it was them on the other end of the phone line? How about waking up before your alarm? Helen Crichton might point to a knock at the door or a forerunner before a loved one dies. My father was home one night and heard 3 distinct knocks at his door 3 separate times in Port Midway. When he went to check, no one was there. And just then he received a phone call to tell him that his mother, my grandmother, had died. These types of events seem to point to something supernatural or perhaps a touch of the divine, or could they just be coincidence? I remember when my grandmother passed away, her favorite song was "You Are My Sunshine." As she died, we sang the song to her in the hospital. As we ventured from the church to the cemetery for the burial, the music interestingly played on the radio. I think these moments, Celtic Christianity may call them thin places. This phrase, used for 1,000 years, comes from the mystical world of Celtic spirituality, people who are deeply connected to the natural world and considered all aspects of life sacred and infused with the presence of the divine. The Celtic people viewed thin places as locations or moments in the year's cycle where the veil between the world and the spiritual realm weakened. Here you could encounter those who had gone before. Today, thin places are perhaps more commonly considered locations in which there is an undeniable connection to the sacred. You may have one of those spaces that you feel. Paul's reading today, I think, is somewhat psychological and supernatural and, of course, spiritual. He's saying to his followers, we're not keeping this quiet, not on your life. Just like the psalmist wrote, I believed it, so I said it. Paul says we say what we believe. And what we believe is that the one who raised up the Jesus will raise up with you alive. So we're not giving up. How could we? Even though on the outside it often looks like things are falling apart on us, on the inside, where God is making new life, not a day goes by without his unfolding grace. These hard times, Paul says, are small potatoes compared to the coming good times. There's a far more here than meets the eye. The things we see now are here today, gone tomorrow. But the things we can't see now will last forever. He talks about tents and how they will be picked up, referring to our bodies once we leave this physical world. Have you ever tried to understand God, particularly during a time of pain? We know the tragedy that many have learned about for the first time this last week. We also recognize that many have known about the graves of lost children for generations. The discovery of at least 215 bodies of Indigenous children in Kamloops, BC is horrifying, unjust, and an affront to God. As I said in my pastoral letter this week, we as the Anglican Church have a lot to account for, and we have also begun the journey of reconciliation, and we continue to travel daily from that point in 1993. The gospel this morning points to the nature of evil and Jesus' authority to heal, to teach, and to gather his friends together. Human power does not come from Satan, but rather from God. It's almost like Mark is teasing us. What is the power to which you rely upon? What is the power to which we rely upon? He's saying you need to worry about evil because it is present, it is real, but trust in those who do the will of God. That is where your allegiances must lie, with God. So how do we see God at this moment after the nation begins to take greater notice and when the world has pointed at Canada? Often people of faith look to the sky for help. Bede Griffiths was a Benedictine monk and priest who lived in ashrams in India, in South India, and became a noted yogi. He traveled around the world and he asked people of faith, where is God? In this study, the people in the East, Hindus and Buddhists, would point to their heart, while the Jewish people, Christians and Muslims, often in the West, pointed outside of themselves up to the heavens. Where is God? Paul tells us that what takes place on the inside is just as important as what takes place on the outside or up in the cosmos. Paul's saying, listen up, folks. We're all going to die sometime. When things crumble around us, when a city perishes, and when we face struggle, he talks about the hope found in the eternal. Most likely, if Paul were asked where God was, he'd point to himself first, perhaps, and then up to the heavens. So what does this have to do with us today? You know, I really hate the words we hear a lot lately, particularly from politicians and even church leaders. Those words of our thoughts and prayers are with you. We listen to it in the United States over and over again where there is gun violence. Thinking and putting your hands together, I mean, come on, where is the action? Such a statement, I think, of prayers and thoughts is like pointing to the heavens first and saying, I'll think about it. I'll leave it up to God. God will take care of it. You see, I don't think God works that way. God gives us a heart, a mind, and a soul, and we darn well better start using it. That's what we need now in response to the place in which the indigenous peoples of this country find themselves. We need action, not just prayer. We need systemic change. We need our government to stand up, and we ourselves need to stand up. And we need to listen. Prayer sure will help, but we need that action. And we must all be on the same page. Our houses should not be divided as we seek to reconcile. I think that is what Paul is talking about. He's saying that the power to make change is within you. It's within you and me. God is within you. Jesus is within you. Of course, God is all around us, and we try to find that divine, particularly in our times of need and sorrow. Perhaps the thin places we experience can inspire us. But I think the power really comes from within, as Paul says, so we do not lose heart. Even though our outer nature is wasting away, our inner nature is being renewed day by day. Mark Elliott shares a story that he says is about a disciple and his teacher. "Where shall I find God?" a disciple asked. "Here," the teacher said. "Then why can't I see God?" "Because you do not look." "But what should I look for?" the disciple continued. "Nothing. Just look," the teacher said. "But at what?" "At anything your eyes alight upon," the teacher said. But must I look in a special kind of way? No. The ordinary way will do. But don't I always look the ordinary way? No, you don't, the teacher said. But why ever not? The disciple pressed. Because to look, you must be here. You're mostly somewhere else, the teacher said. So, my friends, a question for us today, and perhaps for our nation, is what are we going to do about it? For we have the power within us to make great change, for we have that responsibility. Amen.